I obviously was overhyped and had some theories of my own that I thought that this show was going to lead up to. Now, I'm not going to trash the showrunners. I'm not going to trash the show like a lot of other people that have fan theorized things. It didn't give me the things that I was hoping for as a fan, but it gave me other things that were necessary for the MCU and necessary for that story. So it was still a beautiful story, but obviously I made, assumptions and directions that didn't actually. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Geek Branch podcast. I know it's been a couple of weeks. You know how we are. We take our breaks. We've been going through a bunch of craziness, but we're back. It's going to be me, Eternal Slade, alongside with my partner in crime, Novelle. And I know you're wondering, where the heck is Walken? Well, he just had himself a little bundle of a miracle. That's right, him and his wife had just had their first child, and he's enjoying a breakaway. We told him, relax from us, so that way he can focus on his new child and get adjusted to that. He's been having fun, to say the least. So we're gonna let him take his time, and we are gonna go diving into what happened with Wandavision. That's right, it finally finished, and me and Novelle have a lot to talk about. So first things first, what's the first thing that really popped out for you, Novelle?
Oh man, of course it has to be Scarlet Witch fully embracing her chaos magic, getting to see that in action in classic MCU style, flying and firing boats left and right.
Yeah, that was really cool. And then also the really cool part of her embracing her Scarlet Witch was obviously all this is going to be spoilers. I mean, it's in the title, but the awesome outfit they finally gave her. It was a nice blend of the MCU costume with a more comic accurate costume.
Right, especially the headpiece and cape, of course.
Yes, that was the most epic part for the outfit, obviously. So me and Novelle actually, before all this last night, had a whole debate on the whole vision debate that the two visions had, whether they were which one was the true vision. And obviously they had their whole debate, and at the end of it, they decided neither one of them was the true vision. What was what was it called? The argument that he...
It's the thought experiment, the ship of Theseus, a pretty old one at that, and also one of my favorites. It's centered around identity. So the Vision and the White Vision have a debate based upon the original premise for the ship of Theseus, which is the ship of Theseus is an artifact in a museum, and over time, its planks of wood rot and are replaced with new planks. When no original plank remains, is the ship in the museum still the ship of Theseus?
Right, and of course, I was saying that I still think, even though they came to their conclusion, I still think that the original body is the original Vision. But I did do some more thoughts on it, and at the end of the day, what they pointed out was pretty much accurate. Neither one of them are the true Vision. I think if both of them combined, it would have been interesting, because then that might have been the closest thing that they would have gotten to the true Vision. But I don't know.
Well, so once again, ever since Plutarch originally threw out this idea, it's been most commonly debated, and there are several lines of thoughts that you can pick to decide how you feel about it or what you think is the correct answer. There is no solid answer. So my personal favorite is the one that the show decided to go with, which is the rot. And in this case, it was expanded upon to mean the memories and the experiences of the ship is the ship of Theseus.
Right.
And so that is the one that I am most partial to as an answer. When reflecting that upon Vision and White Vision, that means that neither one of them are actually Vision.
Yeah.
And Vision, in truth, is some combination of both of their experiences that does not exist yet. Because obviously what's happened with White Vision is that it is Vision's body reconstructed, And with his circuitry that you saw during the Wakanda part of the last two films in the series, Endgame and Infinity War, where Vision's mind was being reconstructed as to allow it to function without the Mind Stone, still contains all of the memories because he's functionally indestructible. So there was no way of really removing them once they were made and designed to contain himself without the Mind Stone. That Vision, as we saw, gets his memories unlocked by our Vision, or the Vision that had taken up residence in Westview. And so he has all of the memories from basically Wakanda back since his creation as Jarvis. But he doesn't have the memories, in my opinion, at least to what I had saw during the flashing, because it was a really quick, flash montage of him getting his memories back of what had occurred in Westview. That's something that only our colored Vision has. And so both of the Visions are missing something. The original Vision had the Mind Stone. Only the Vision in Westview is constructed from a fragment of it, the fragment that had resided in Wanda, given Wanda's own interpretation of events. And then the White Vision, of course, is his original body and contains the bulk of his original memories that the Westview Vision did not have. So it makes this really unique conundrum that the only way to have the true Vision would be to fuse the two of them together.
Right. That was what I was thinking, but that was not what they went with.
Right. Of course, when the hex was broken down by Wanda and allowed to dissolve, Vision, in a very heartfelt scene, does say his goodbyes with the expectation that they will meet again.
Right.
As for White Vision flies directly up and out, like straight up Superman style, and he is not seen. So as to where he is and what he is doing, we do not know.
This is actually an interesting part about WandaVision. It's actually set like right around the time as Far From Home, Spider-Man's second movie in the MCU. And so you don't see anything about White Vision being mentioned in that movie, which means that no one outside of Sword, even because at the end of WandaVision, it's pretty well set right around that time. No one knows about White Vision being around, aside from that small group. So you would have thought that you would have heard something about him along those ways. So obviously he went into hiding.
Right. So I think a very important part about that, though, is like solid, verifiable confirmation.
Right.
Because of the events, there are very few people that can directly confirm the results of White Vision.
Right.
For instance, not even Haywood knows what happens to him. Because of how the scene was set up, they were fighting in this place that looks like a museum. I think it was the library. Because it was filled with books, but they were fighting in this building, and White Vision flies like directly, like 90 degrees straight up into the air, and is gone. He breaks through the ceiling, flies directly up, and he doesn't fly over the town in any way. Haywood's trapped in the car. Wanda's outside with the kids. The agents that were a part of Sword that were being mobilized by Haywood were all caught in Wiccan's spell, so they were frozen. They couldn't look up. And when Vision comes out of the building, having directly, seen this occur, he only just tells Wanda, everything's okay now. So there are so few people that actually have any degree of, resolution as to what exactly White Vision, what happened to him. I don't think it could have spread in any way. You know what I'm saying? I think that just the lack of knowledge is almost ubiquitous across everyone who was at the scene.
Well, I just would like to point out with all that, it's because the incompetence of Haywood. Dear God, that guy, I thought the whole time he was just pretending to be an idiot. No, that guy was just an idiot. I don't know why he was in charge of Sword, although we know Nick Fury is actually in charge of Sword. He made some of the worst decisions, like in a Phil Op situation ever. I don't even understand why that guy ever got the position that he had, because like one after another, he kept making terrible calls.
Right. So like it's kind of an interesting thing, because I think the one thing that the finale does is detract from both of the series antagonists. Agatha, of course, is proven to be not too intelligent, as well as Haywood proving himself to be kind of a fool as well.
She's kind of intelligent when it comes to knowing magic, but that's about as far as it goes. Right. And it's also because it seems like she had we discussed about this before we were recording. She obviously talked about how there was something inside of her that made her have this dark magic. And so it wasn't necessarily that she was intelligent. It was just that she happened to have some powerful magic.
Right. I mean, she's been around for a while. We know for a fact that based off her own flashback, we can date her to the Salem witch trials.
Yep.
And normally,
which is accurate to the comics. She was a Salem witch.
Well, she was, but she's actually older in the comics because she was there when Atlantis sank.
Okay.
She witnessed the sinking of Atlantis.
I guess that depends on which version of her character.
Well, the one that I'm thinking about is back during the Frightful Four era of the Fantastic
Right,
Four.
since they decided to go evil with her, because that was like the one version of her that was like just straight up evil, whereas most of the other ones were more gray characters that ended up being like a nanny for Wanda's kids or different things like that.
School marm. Yeah. So she's had a lot of like updates over the course of time, especially coming directly into the MCU like this. So she's not a combination of her previous comic book selves, like the oldest version from the Fantastic Four. For instance, she doesn't have her cat Ebony. If you're a reader,
yeah. Instead, it's a callback to her son. She calls him Senor Scratchy. And her son's name, I believe it's Nicholas Scratch, right?
Nicholas Scratch.
Yeah.
And of course, she has a plethora of grandkids, but
right.
We're not going to get into that. That's just comic.
And her son is actually is an evil character anytime he shows up.
Right. And her kids can be heroic. Grandkids can be heroic or villainous, depending on what story arc they're taking place in. But regardless, going back to her, so the logic behind it, looking at the character, was that when she was originally being put on trial, she was pleading with her mother and her coven to be taught to control whatever entity had some possession over her. The coven and her mother, of course, decided, no, we're not going to give you this chance. We're not going to put us and everything else at risk. Your magic is a bad magic.
Yeah, so we're just going to straight up kill you.
Right. And this, because
that's always a good idea.
And this kind of forms Agnes's personality, both in this moment and her experience during the Salem witch trial. So she posits this kind of life philosophy to Wanda, that a fundamental truth is that if a woman gains too much power, then there will be a response against them. And it's reflected in, of course, Haywood, who basically is acting the part of the witch hunter and is almost replicating this experience that Agnes had when she was first becoming a witch, or having survived the attempt on her life by her coven, which was that the moment Wanda got out the hex earlier in the series, the first thing Haywood did was roll up with guns and point them at her.
Right. No, like, I'm gonna try to talk this thing out. I'm just gonna go with the stereotypical, like, old 80s military general, like, kind of like persona, where we're just gonna kill things without questioning them first and not listening to the one character that actually was part of his team, that actually was inside of the dome.
Well, Haywood ends up becoming a clone of Thunderbolt Ross.
Yeah.
Basically.
Less interesting.
Right. Because Haywood's advisor is his predecessor's daughter, as opposed to Thunderbolt Ross, who's getting advised by his daughter in how to deal with the
Well, also Thunderbolt Ross also has a much bigger personality.
Well, yes. I mean, but they still are behaving.
No, I'm just saying that's why I said he's a less interesting version, because Thunderbolt Ross has a little bit more like nads to the guy when he's barking commands.
I mean, he has gumption. He'll roll up in a tank himself. You know what I'm saying? While the most that Haywood ever did was shoot an unarmed woman. I mean, so like, obviously Haywood's never going to be comparable to Thunderbolt Ross, especially looking over from like the comics where Ross gets even more to do. But my point being is that he's occupying that role of belligerent and kind of bullheaded military man.
Yeah, I just wasn't expecting that out of the person that would be in charge of sword. You know what I mean? I would expect that out of like maybe he was like an army general or something like that. But like Sword's supposed to be like one of the more intelligent departments in the military.
Well, not only that, it's the successor to Shield,
right?
And it was not just the succession of Shield; it was the succession of the character that we had originally met, Miss Rambeau in Captain Marvel.
And we know that she was a very competent leader.
Not only that, but she was also very emotionally intelligent. Because if you give her credit from the Captain Marvel movie, and it's not just the writers feeding her lines to emphasize Captain Marvel, which it may have been, we're not trying to be too judgmental.
Right.
She was very emotionally intelligent, and once she reunited with her long-lost friend, Carol Danvers, not only could she summarize Carol Danvers' character, but she could also convince Carol herself of who she was. Just because you went off and worked for aliens for, 30 years, doesn't mean you no longer the woman that I was friends with. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
And so she pulls a judge of character, because you gotta understand that if I disappeared out of your life and came back 20 years later with superpowers, you probably wouldn't trust me. No,
not usually.
Right. So we could assume that at the most.
I mean, especially if you got powers, I'd be
right. You're like, maybe I should fill this out a little bit more rather than just blanketly come.
Maybe think about times I pissed them off and making sure that I'm a little bit nicer this time around.
Right. You expect that, but older Rambeau definitively set out with this open-hearted and open-armed approach, including introducing her child to her.
Right.
Which, I might not have been brave enough to have done that.
No.
Right. And so this is the person, though, that selects Haywood as a successor.
That's why I was thinking like this whole time he was going to turn out to be like some sort of hidden villain that, just like manipulated her in some sort of way at the end. And he's been the guy behind the scenes. No, he's just like some stereotypical, bumbling, gun-ho, somehow ends up in the position they ended up in.
Right. And so the strange thing
So that was disappointing.
Well, yeah, but the strangest thing about it also is that he wasn't always this character. It really was revealed in the later episodes, because when you get the flashback, when he's dealing with Wanda, we originally assumed Wanda raided the base.
Right.
Because he didn't deny her outright. He didn't actually. He convinced her to leave.
Right.
And that's a really interesting facet of his character, that he understood that he couldn't get into a direct confrontation with Wanda. It was better to just show Wanda why what she wanted couldn't be done.
Well, I thought at first, because I kept thinking he was this hidden villain, I was like, okay, well, maybe he's smart enough to try to piss her off, thinking that she is raiding this place and going to take Vision's body, because that's the way it sets it up for us, is what we're believing, that she's going to raid and steal his body. And then that's not what happens, and then I'm just like, oh, okay, so this is the direction we're going. So I guess he's kind of like, he's more scared of Wanda after all that happens and more determined to take her down.
I mean,
and is not thinking, more logically in the situation.
Well, he doesn't start, at least in the timeline we've been presented for WandaVision, he doesn't start with the burn the witch mentality.
Right.
He gains it somehow. Yeah. But she did nothing directly to him.
Yeah, it was so confusing to me. I didn't see any sort of connection that made him flip that switch. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right. And so it's jarring. And that's one of the things that I, dock from the show overall is the antagonist. Because, like I said originally with Haywood, like he falls out. He's not even actually the main antagonist. It actually is Agnes.
Yes.
He's more
and she's kind of a
Right. Well, so yeah, he just ends up becoming more of a, hurdle in the street. And he's really a engine to provide us with White Vision in the end.
Right.
That's like all of his character has really amounted to.
That was the point of his character.
Yeah, he stumbled into this creation.
So mentioning all that, the things, the expectations and all that, I think I should get and point out. I obviously was overhyped and had some theories of my own that I thought that this show was going to lead up to. Now, I'm not going to trash the showrunners. I'm not going to trash the show like a lot of other people that have fan theorized things. It didn't give me the things that I was hoping for as a fan, but it gave me other things that were necessary for the MCU and necessary for that story. So it was still a beautiful story, but obviously I made, assumptions and directions that didn't actually go into fruition. And so obviously what I'm talking about is different things like the whole Quicksilver thing, where we found out he's not actually the Fox Quicksilver. And
it's just the using of the actor. It's Agnes' husband.
And I'm sorry, but really, Disney, you had to use a boner joke? Like, come on, you already stabbed us and twisted the knife with all of us fans that were hoping at the very least he was some version of Quicksilver, and then you had to give us a boner joke. I'm sorry, but that was the one thing about me as a fan with the fan theories that pissed me off. You didn't have to do the boner joke. It was so dumb.
Well, I've never been a fan of Marvel humor. You know that. I complain about it in every Marvel movie.
I mean, what? And then he was an immature character, so I understood when he kind of laughed and said, boner. And I'm just like, yeah, that definitely reminds me of like earlier Evan Peters, some of his earlier roles.
Well, at the very least, no matter how childish it was, it is true to
the childish
Fox,
character.
Yeah, the Fox Quicksilver, which honestly, that right there is just anomalous, to be 100% honest with you.
Right.
We know that once Agnes's control charm, the necklace, is removed from Ralph becomes a very reasonable person. He stops making jokes immediately. The first thing he asks is, please do not kill me.
No. Well, yeah, that's right, because he did make the boner joke.
While this,
yeah, that's right.
So that childish character is either a product of Agnes's own mind, or it's an intentional overstep by the producers and writers to enforce the false idea that was Fox Quicksilver.
Right, and then kind of give a little wink and a nod at the future for Marvel.
Right, and see, I just like things like that because I think that's
I just didn't like the boner joke. It was this.
I'm just talking about Quicksilver like that overall.
Yeah, no, he was 100% pretty dang close to the Fox. Besides, the childish part of him, not the being fidgety 100% all the time like he was in the Fox one, because like he was constantly on the go in the Fox one. He wasn't so much like that from what little we saw of him in WandaVision.
Right, we definitely could tell that it was not 100% analogous to him, because one of the biggest things about him was how he had the personality and had the overlay of having a character on the show, which kind of also interfered with that personality coming through. That Quicksilver, even when he was hurt, unless you hurt his legs, would always hop back to his feet and do something. So not even if it was Vaughn or anything, I understand he wouldn't want to fight Wanda, but when she knocked him into the hay bale and when he finally pissed her off, he stayed down.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
That would not be like the other Quicksilver.
Yeah, he at the very least, he would have sped and stood up.
I guess I should have known the moment we didn't get a slow-mo scene with him that it wasn't the Fox one. Because they always, ever since they introduced him, every single movie, they had to have him to have that elaborate slow-mo scene. Now, the first one was really cool. Don't get me wrong. Everybody loves that. And so they had to replicate that. So should have known it once they didn't replicate that.
Right.
So what do you think they're going to do? Do you think Agnes will show up again?
Well, obviously, she has to be.
You think she'll be in the Doctor Strange movie?
I don't know where she's going to appear, but it is Chekhov's gun. I mean, that's just hard sell. You can't avoid it. And especially once Agnes said, you still need me, and Wanda said, I'll know where to find you.
Yeah, and then obviously that's not how it's going to go down.
Well, even if they do play around with it, she has to reappear.
So one of the theories is right now after the finale came out is that, a character people have kind of forgotten about because the first Doctor Strange movie is ended quite a few years ago now. It's probably been like 4 or 5 years, probably 4 years. And so they're thinking that Mordo comes and gets her because he wants to get rid of a whole bunch of the more wizards and witches and stuff like that. And so, maybe he can just use her as a pawn against Doctor Strange.
Well, so 2 things about Agnes. It's our own theorizing, but it's a reasonable assumption based off of what the show has given us. The thing that made Agnes capable of doing what she was doing was not her own magical talent, but the entity that resided within her.
Right.
And now we assume because of Agnes's warning to Wanda that entity resides in Wanda now from stealing Agnes's powers.
Right.
because she didn't just take back her own chaos magic. You see it in the color
She
exchange.
took her powers too.
Right.
Which would make it more reasonable for her to team up with Mordo because she doesn't have her powers, so he would have no reason to kill her off because she doesn't have any.
Right, she just has magical knowledge.
Right.
Which is fine. I'm not complaining about that in any way. I'm just saying that the thing necessary to kind of blank wizards and witches and all the other magic users is residing in Wanda now, not residing in Agnes.
Right, but Agnes would be the person with the knowledge to help him.
Right, barring some other mystical magical tone.
Right.
Besides the Darkhold.
Right.
But
and
I mean...
Speaking of the Darkhold, that also proves that the TV shows that use their Darkhold, like the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Runaways, aren't considered canon anymore. Because they called their book, both of their shows called their books the Darkhold. And this one has to be the definitive Darkhold at this point.
Right. And since we haven't actually activated multiverse theory, because Wandavision actually is a stopper on that, we know because of how the Hex has been explained, as well as Agnes's explanations, that the multiverse is not in play in the events of WandaVision.
Unless something to do with her boys at the end scene.
Right, but once again...
We don't know that. That could be Limbo, it could be Hell.
Like Dormammu's.
Yeah.
It could be a number of things. So there's no way of assigning without Quicksilver being Fox's Quicksilver.
Right.
The multiverse is now off the table for theorizing. It's reaching at this point.
Right. It's reaching. The only thing that gave us a little nugget was possibly something to do with her kids. But most people are thinking that they're probably stuck in one of those realms. So maybe Nightmare or Mephisto will be involved in the multiverse of madness. And that's why Wanda gets involved. She needs obviously someone needs to teach her how to control her powers. I'm sure that Doctor Strange hears about what happens, obviously. And so he might be the one to seek her out to kind of keep things in check, knowing that she has the Darkhold, probably doesn't want her to just be willy-nilly with one of the most powerful magical tomes on the universe. So,
if he can track it, remember he doesn't have the eye anymore.
Well, he has the eye, he just doesn't have the time stone in the eye.
Right. Well,
we don't know the specific, there might be magical abilities within the eye itself without the time stone.
Well, no, that's true that the eye is enchanted in and of itself, but the thing that was powering it is the Mind Stone. I mean, sorry,
time stone.
Is the time stone. Because I was at the same time
was
thinking
the time stone. Was the time stone what let him track people?
Well, no, it's the power source for the eye.
Well, I mean, he's got all kinds of other old ancient, different tomes and books and stuff like that. And
I'm not saying he can't replicate it in some way. I'm not saying that he can't the primary function though that was the Eye of Agamotto is lost to him for at least two reasons. One, he's not the original creator of it, and two, the power source is a gem. One
thing that Wong did say to him though in the first movie, after you use the Eye of Agamotto so much, if you master it, you no longer need it.
Right. Whether that's the time replication ability, but
I mean, it was pretty vague on that.
Right. I mean, and even then,
I could be wrong. Anybody that wants to correct me, leave a comment below.
Right. But even then, what we're going off of is just what fuels you. You know what I'm saying? What gives you the power to do the thing that you need to do. And so we know for a fact that in the case of Doctor Strange, the things that were being accomplished by the eye, not technique-wise, but just I have the power to do it, was coming from the stone. Same thing with Wanda, for instance. Wanda's powers are so freaking immense because she's the fabled Scarlet Witch. The magic she's drawing from is a fuel source in and of itself. Right,
we find out she's more powerful. She can be more powerful than the Sorcerer Supreme himself.
I mean, I think that bar none, she is more powerful. Just that if they had to fight,
she's not as knowledgeable.
Yeah, you would give the fight to the Sorcerer Supreme because of the same way she was going to lose to Agnes.
Right, but she's learning more.
Right, because she's now reading the Darkhold.
Also, speaking of her reading the Darkhold, something that you might not have noticed, while she was reading the Darkhold, they actually used Doctor Strange's theme song.
Yeah. I mean, that's where we know she's going to definitively reappear.
Right.
She might get a hint in the end of the Spider-Man movie.
Right, because Doctor Strange actually is supposed to be in that movie.
Right, but we know definitively she will be appearing in the Multiverse of Madness next time we see her. So another important thing about that is Wanda's powers are still much more closer to her mutant self than magic.
Right.
And so they seem innate. You know, the comment was, as Agatha said, she was forged, not born. And it's a series of events that have kind of chaotically drug her sleeping abilities to the forefront and is like gasoline for the big fire that is chaos magic.
Right.
So definitively, because we know how she even adopted Agnes's teachings, short though they may be, about the runes for the final fight, she does not have any magical training at all.
Right.
And
I mean, she just basically does a bunch of energy blasts to make the runes happen instead of doing actual like incantations or anything like that.
It's a straight up replication. She fires, misses, it hits the wall, and forms the rune.
She's the Kakashi of magic.
Right. But that's the important thing about that, though, is that she's at the end reading the Darkhold. The Darkhold isn't written in a language.
Right.
Right. It requires some form of magical translation that Wanda isn't capable of.
Right.
To our knowledge.
Right. Unless the chaos magic inside of her just like
is auto translating it for some strange reason. So
I mean, they keep things vague with her powers. I mean, they've always kept things vague with her powers, even in the comics. Her powers weren't originally chaos magic.
They were
they weren't called. It wasn't called chaos magic. It was called something else. And eventually, I don't know what comic it is, but there's eventually a comic where they're like, "What the heck? I thought you could only do this." She said, "I don't know. I guess I have chaos magic." And so they went with that. That was the term they used from then on.
Right, but it's Strange much later on that just
actually
sets the tone
explains it
and reveals that you're not doing magic at all. You're just a reality warper.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You kind of set this precedent for yourself. You're just a mutant with reality warping abilities.
Right.
But that's just kind of how comic books eventually settle on things between all the different writers. But coming back to the point, there is that there is something though that would know how to read the Darkhold, and that's the entity that's been piggybacking off of Agnes.
Right. Which was interesting. They never actually, like, all we saw was her. Obviously, there was something messed up with her, like with her hands being all black and different things like that from it. But you never actually saw it communicate or anything like that. You would assume there would have been some sort of communication. But I guess it wasn't symbiotic.
No, it's definitely on the side of being parasitic because its entire purpose has been to absorb magic.
Right.
And that's kind of all that it does.
It would have been interesting to see how she got a hold of that too. Like, it never was shown.
Well, we presume, of course, going to the logic side of things, is that it's a kind of a prophesized thing, the same way the Scarlet Witch was.
Yeah.
Because the witches, of course, are acting off of a kind of a surety. They know that they have to get rid of Agnes. You see what I'm saying? That even her own mother agrees with the decision and attempts to do so.
So the assumption is it's probably one of Doctor Strange's more famous. I would assume it's one of those villains. Which one do you think it would be? I'm leaning more towards Nightmare. Because Nightmare, there's even mentions about people having nightmares in the dome. And seeing Wanda's nightmares.
That's specifically on Wanda's end, though.
Yeah.
Now, that can, of course, directly relate to it. But the nightmares they're seeing are
Wanda's nightmares, right.
Yeah.
But they do mention nightmares about 3 or 4 times in the show. And Marvel does like to be on the nose.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible that Nightmare appears. He's one of the big entities that can, put that type of power downrange.
Right, and Scott Derrickson, the guy who was supposed to direct Doctor Strange 2, the first director, he kept talking about how he wanted to work with Nightmare being in one of his movies. So,
it's definitely
could have stayed in the script when Sam Raimi took over.
True. It's also definitely easier to make a horror-esque movie using Nightmare.
Yeah.
Because, of course, he gives you the ability to do things like what we saw in the New Mutants. I don't know if anyone actually watched the movie or not, but
you enjoyed it. I know. I never watched it. I'm sorry. I was just like, all right, well, the whole series is done. I'm not worried about it.
Not to jump off to like strange tangents. We'll hop back off and New
Mutants. People like the strange tangents.
But New Mutants is my favorite X-Men comic book run. And amongst them, of course, is the kind of like villain for that lineup. Even though it's not a villain directly, it's a consequence of one of the members of the lineup, which is Hellbear.
I was gonna say, I assume Hellbear.
Yeah, and the powers that you see there are a type of reality warping in the same way, just on a much smaller scale than what Wanda, of course, is capable of. And that is one of the precedents for, Hellbear, is that it is the character's nightmare made real. And of course, it's nearly indestructible, throws down tons of damage, and it's just a giant flaming bear. So, But it does, of course, in the course of the movie, because Nemians, if you did watch it, was filmed in a horror movie fashion.
Right.
Does play off all the characters that are involved, because they all get caught in their own worst nightmares. But anyway, back to WandaVision. So, like I said, the future is pretty wide and open because they decided to be surprisingly tame and didn't make any large motions.
They usually do. They usually try, because especially since it was the first for the Phase 4, you would think that they would have, went out with a bang. But also the thing you have to think about is Black Widow was supposed to be the first thing for the Phase 4, but the virus that shall not be spoken, because I don't want YouTube to take me off. The Coof messed everything up.
But yeah. So, as it stands, there was nothing to be done about that. Like I said, they were extremely conservative for WandaVision, which is okay, I guess. But it does set the tone for Phase 4 at the very least.
Yeah.
Which is still leaning towards having a strong presence for magic and transformation for both characters, and kind of more metaphysical and metaphorical thinking as far as what's going to be occurring in Phase 4. Because, I mean, the one thing that we never would have suspected when we got two indestructible things fighting each other, Vision and White Vision, was for the fight to end in a philosophical debate.
But of course, with Vision, it's always he's got to have his philosophical moments,
Well, I mean, yes and no, because
he had this with Ultron.
Not even
at
really.
The very end.
Oh, see, the thing about it was, right?
After they already beat him, of course, though.
Right, that's my point, is that the person who was throwing philosophy downrange in Age of Ultron was Ultron. Vision's answer was, no, you're wrong, for like the majority of that movie.
Yeah.
And then to nail the head of to hammer the nail in, Vision just picks up Thor's hammer, and so we know definitively that just Vision's right.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? It's kind of like in Age of Ultron, they made it so that Vision is just the counter argument to Ultron, who's actually being philosophical.
Right.
Because Ultron starts with it. He literally walks out with the Geppetto line.
Well, I mean, that's the whole reason why they picked James Spader, because he's good with the whole philosophical kind of big speech type thing.
Right.
He's known for that.
Yeah, so definitively we can expect that Phase 4 is going to be off the beaten path, but we might see a quick and immediate return to it because of Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Right. So theirs is going to be, if it's going to be bigger things for the MCU, their stuff is going to be more of the ground level heroes. You know what I mean? It's not going to be the more cosmic or more magical. I would say that WandaVision unleashed, because I'm doing this for my thumbnail, unleashed the chaos of everything that's about to come out. Because there's a lot of chaos that's going to happen afterwards. There's going to be the Spider-Man craziness, and then there's Multiverse of Madness.
Right.
But definitely you're right about the Falcon and Winter Soldier. That one's going to be
more traditional.
It's going to be more similar to what we got out of Winter Soldier, which, of course, Winter Soldier changed a lot, just in a different way. It was the collapse of S.H.I.E.L.D. So who knows what we might get out of this one. I know that they're supposed to be in some form or fashion. A lot of people are saying that they're setting up for the Dark Avengers. So we could see that, since we're getting Baron Zemo in the show. So, And then there's also rumors that the second Scarlet Witch is supposed to be showing up in the show. So who knows?
There might be a couple of things that can get done here.
It's just going to be the more ground level heroes.
We can't extrapolate any of that off of WandaVision, though.
No, not at all. That's just me pointing out that if something does happen out of that show, it won't be in the same direction, obviously, as what we're going to get out of WandaVision and the two things that are obviously connected to it, which is the third Spider-Man film and Doctor Strange.
And so while we're talking about setup, because setup is important, about what we know WandaVision has set up.
Right.
We know that WandaVision has definitively set up Monica Rambeau as a hero.
She's clearly going to be in Captain Marvel too.
Right. And we know that Skrull Invasion is probably what's going down here.
Well, Secret Invasion is a show that's going to be on Disney Plus, so one would assume.
Right.
She might be in that show. I mean, she might be one of the people. We know Nick Fury's in it, so...
So like the problem is that without the original comic premise for Skrulls, because the MCU Skrulls are not the super Skrulls that we're used to in the comics, where they copy a person and their powers.
The issue was at the time when they made Captain Marvel, was that Fox still owned the rights to Super Skrull. So there was still a lot of the abilities to Skrulls that were kind of mixed up in law limbo. And so now, who knows, maybe with this one they can kind of go in that direction where they still take people's powers.
Right, because you got to remember that one of the most important aspects,
because they like to retcon things.
Yeah, but one of the most important aspects of Secret Invasion is that they are replacing the heroes.
Right.
And the reason for that is because they can replicate the heroes' abilities to an extent.
Right.
So it's kind of important that, if we do Secret Invasion, they can do that. Otherwise, they're just going to be taking place of humans in positions of power, which is useful, but we've already done the Sokovia Accords. We know that humans can only interfere with superheroes so much, because you're going to get the eventual Captain America response where they just leave.
They could... So, they could be taken... Because, Taskmaster is in that Black Widow movie. And he can copy off of people's abilities and stuff like that. So there could be someone that uses that. The Skrulls learn from him, and that's their MCU loophole to how they steal other people's abilities in some form or fashion.
Yeah. But see, Taskmaster can't replicate powers.
No, he can replicate like fighting styles and moves, but
anything physical that you do.
Right.
Like if Daredevil does a flying leap skyscraper, skyscraper.
Obviously, Taskmaster can't copy powers. Everybody knows that. But you know what I'm trying to say,
but I'm saying that that's the reason why the Skrulls come into effect.
Right.
Because they can fully replicate everything the hero can do.
So that's... Maybe they'll hint at that with Black Widow, is what I'm trying to get at. Maybe we'll find out at the end, because they keep talking about how Black Widow's coming back or something, which is nonsense, but...
A Skrull could take her place.
Exactly, that's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, and then that's, once again, reasonable. She doesn't have power. She has equipment and ability. You know what I'm saying?
Right. She'd be one of the easiest ones. Hawkeye would be an easy one for them, but obviously I don't think they're going that direction since he's getting his own show that's coming out at the end in December, so I don't think they'll be going that direction, but who knows, maybe at the end they find out he's incapacitated and a Skrull takes over his spot.
Right.
So
there's that. But going back to Captain Marvel 2 and especially Monica Rambeau, is that we do get to see the full spectrum of her powers.
Pun intended?
Pun intended, yes. And not only that, but they were kind enough to somehow, for some strange reason, do an in-episode hint. So
what, with the Skrull coming up to talk to her?
No. About her, like, so when she's in the house with Ralph, Boner, he is listening to 311's Amber.
Oh yeah.
Right, like that's the song that's playing in the back. Yeah. And so that song is a direct hint to the color tone for her powers.
Yeah. Because
her eyes are amber when she gets shot by Haywood.
Right.
And I'm like,
but her eyes change colors.
Well, yeah, they glow light blue, but that's her, I guess, her full form, like binary, for instance.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because remember, she gets shot, and she shows that she has the ability to phase.
Yeah.
That she also has the ability to bleed kinetic energy, because the bullets fall out slower when they come from inside of her.
Right.
So it's showing her, full power, I guess you could say. And that's nice. But we would have gotten that without the song hint, so it seems like there should have been something in between, to give us because if that was last episode,
Right.
we would have had a chance to theorize and arrive there.
Right.
But it happened in episode. There's only like 10 minutes in between those two scenes.
So one of the things someone pointed out in an article, more than half of WandaVision was finished, but there was still a bit of it that needed to be filmed. So there's scheduling conflicts, all kinds of different stuff when that happens. So there could have been some stuff that was rushed and cut out thanks to the Coof.
Could be, yeah.
Because there's, Darcy, she played a big role in the show up until those last 2 episodes. And then it was very abrupt how she was suddenly in the last bit of the episode. And then she just kind of disappeared. Because you even get the comment from Jimmy Woo where he's like, well, she said that, debriefings for losers or whatever.
Right. Not only that, but when the circus truck hits Haywood's vehicle, she's not seen.
Yeah, she is. Yeah. Because she says, have fun in jail.
Is she?
Yeah, she says have fun in jail.
I'm saying, no. What I'm saying is like, okay, yes, there's a scene where she does pop up there. My point being is that when she hits him from the side,
you don't see her face.
You don't. Her body is not present in the driver's seat.
So that little scene with her, she could easily have just been in costume real quick and have, done it on a webcam.
A reshoot or something like that.
Yeah, at home.
Yeah. Because I'm like, she was not there for the actual full scene. She was there for just her comment.
Right.
And then she doesn't appear following up from there. So as far as Monica Rambeau, she doesn't have a superhero name yet, so we're gonna have to wait for that to name drop.
Because there's like 6 to 8 different names or something like that they can pick from for her.
She's been around for a really long time. She's considered to be one of the senior Avengers, even though she's not in the founding Avenger.
Yeah. She's been around for a hot minute, even though she
was Captain Marvel before Captain Marvel. This is kind of the thing that is. She is Captain Marvel before Carol Danvers. Let's put it like that. So
just not in the MCU, obviously.
Yeah. So
maybe she will be in Captain Marvel 3.
Yeah, when OG Marvel his story is kind of played to completion and his character is done, she takes the role after him. Yeah. And then after her, we get Carol Danvers. Because Carol Danvers at the time was Miss Marvel.
Right. But they like to retcon things.
Yeah. But like I said, so she got her superhero moments. She got, I think, 2 superhero landings.
Yes.
2 superhero landings, a superhero moment where she stops the bullets. She, proves that she's kind of durable because she takes a, supersonic finger poke from fake Quicksilver. I think that she's going to be able to put some, firepower downrange when she gets a chance to really learn what she's doing. So when we see her in Captain Marvel 2 or Secret Invasion, whichever one she appears in, or both. She will probably use her a lot. A powerhouse in that series. She'll probably be the muscle.
I know you focused on her, but she's not the only one that got a lot of growth from this. That is a big character in the MCU and the background of things. And of course, you know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about Jimmy Woo. You saw a lot of growth of Jimmy Woo throughout that entire show.
Yeah, while keeping to the comedic beat.
Right.
But regardless, though, yes, he did actually, show up and show out. He got a lot of character development and a lot of approval from various different, background entities
that are important eventually.
Right, because Monica Rambeau's definitively going to trust him.
Right.
He makes his connections to counteract Haywood and succeeds in doing so.
Right.
He shows proficiency as a secret agent because he does do the James Bond paperclip handcuff removal.
And he also hot-wired a car.
Yeah. So all in all, he definitely got to show his stuff. Of course, he doesn't get the super heroic moments.
Right. He's still he has growth, but he still has a ways to go until he becomes to the point to where he becomes in charge of 8 agents of Atlas. But clearly that's the direction they're going. They would not put that much focus on him otherwise.
Right.
Marvel always has their plans where they put their little seeds where they grow people.
Yeah. And so I guess 2 other things to wrap this up is 1, the residents of Westview, because Westview does return to its normal self.
Kitty showed out in that last episode. Deborah Rope.
Yeah.
Or Rupp, whatever.
My point being for them is that, yes, they got to play a Walking Dead moment where they all walk up and, of course, unveil the great horror that was Scarlet Witch upon them.
Yep.
So she wasn't nice enough to do a memory wipe. So those folks, those poor unfortunate souls.
Man, they're so messed up in the head now thanks to that.
Yeah, and then you really push the horror home. Like, it was there in the background. You didn't have to confront it, but they did decide to make sure that she did see the consequences of her actions, which is going to put her on that, well, I don't think we're going to let you be a standard hero anymore track.
Right.
Because the one, I think it's the Stepford Wife from episode 3 or 2.
Yes, yeah.
Her daughter is permanently locked in her womb until she's needed for a scene.
Almost all the kids were like that, though.
Right. So
they just made sure to point out a character talking about that.
Right. But my point being was that the kids were not asleep, because you get the dialogue from the adults that when they sleep, they go into a kind of different mental state. Yeah. That kid has been in isolation in that room.
Yeah, but I don't think there'll be much more focus on that.
I mean, obviously they won't, because that's just degrading your hero. You know what I'm saying?
They've already done that enough with Wanda. I mean, they had her at Age of Ultron, Civil War, and now this.
Yeah, I mean, she's always been the person who's been receiving a lot of suspicion for her actions.
Right.
Just because, well, she did work with Hydra, and she did attack the Avengers.
And she has been evil in the comics.
Yeah. So, obviously, we've played that part of her, and they're probably just going to sweep this under the rug and proceed on with her being heroic by the time you get to, Multiverse of Madness. Or
they turn her into the villain at the end of Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah, but see, the problem with that is that we still have to deal with the consequences of Vision.
Right.
And because Vision is a purely heroic character, they can't let his other half run off and become, You
would assume that White Vision would pop up out of nowhere.
I just don't think that they can, there are certain things that you do as a writer that kind of lock you in. That's the reason why I kept bringing up, things like Chekhov's gun.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't do it, you're hurting your work, right? So, for instance, everything that has appeared in WandaVision that is a type of Chekhov's gun, we expect to see in the next series. If they just forget that it exists, we will not be pleased with it as consumers. So they're kind of locked in a certain way. They can't turn her into a completely villainous character, because we had the villainous character in her series. That was Agnes,
Yeah. Which
even though
if it was disappointing,
she is the second dumbest villain in all of the MCU.
Would you say is the first?
Well, I was going to put her as first, actually. I was, but then
you don't agree with me who I think's one of the dumbest.
No, I do not. But
Malekith, he knows.
Justin Hammer is my
yeah, he could be first. Justin Hammer's first. I think Malekith could be second.
Yeah, I would
personally.
When I was watching the episode, because I was in the moment, I was gonna put her as number 1, because the only reason.
But what about the Leaper?
Huh?
What about the Leaper?
No.
Bartok. No. he was in there.
No. But anyway, going back, the only reason why she lost, and this is the reason why she gets this treatment, is because she decided to attack for no reason Wanda from the angle of punishing her for some strange.
Right.
There was no, she could have come in as a mentor.
Yeah.
When things were breaking down in the Hex, she could have came over to Wanda and was like, I can just take your power and fix this, one. But if you don't want that, I can teach you how to use it.
Yeah, nothing about her was very intelligent.
Yeah, she could have been way more devious than she was.
Well, at the beginning, she was intelligent.
Well, obviously, because she was playing the long con.
Right, and then she I don't know, just forgot that,
She became Justin Hammer. Well, whatever, man. I'm not that smart.
Well, at least with Justin Hammer, he was supposed to be
a retard.
Right. Right, it's not even fair to put him number 1 technically, if you think about it, because that's the point of his character.
But he is.
I know, I'm just saying that is the point of his character. Even in the comics, usually he's not even that much of a competent, villain.
Right. No, he has the.
He has his moments.
Well, no. He really has the. It's never him that's the primary scientist.
Right.
He's good at. He's the American. What's the dude's name from Wonder Woman? Wonder Woman's version of Maxwell Lord is very similar to Justin Hammer, but Justin Hammer's dumber.
Right.
That's kind of the role that Justin Hammer plays. The American mogul. You know what I'm saying? That's not too bright, but makes really sellable products.
Right.
He makes weapons. So, you can use the things that he's making. He's just not that smart. But regardless, going back to Agnes, So yeah, Agnes got to play the villain in all aspects.
Yeah.
She was devious, she was a liar, she was cruel, she was willing to hurt children. Because of that, if we have to think of an evil witch, it can't be Scarlet Witch, it has to be Agnes.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? They've locked us into a corner there. If there was more gray between her and Agnes and Scarlet Witch, we could maybe make the premise that Scarlet Witch was going to be the villain.
No, you're absolutely right. I am very disappointed in the fact that they made it so plainly obvious that she was the villain, though.
Right. And like I said, a lot of it is to resolve or to absolve Wanda of the crime she has committed.
Right.
Not
and to set her up as the true Scarlet Witch.
Right. Not of her own violation. She's kind of in the exact same boat she was in House of M, where No More Mutants wasn't a really willful thing. You know what I'm saying? She was angry. She was hurt. She wanted to fix things in the best way she knew how. So she put her powers into that statement without realizing the consequences of it.
Right.
And then once she got to see the consequences of it, and this is 100% true to the comics, she just accepted them. House of M, she was just like, all right, this is all right with me. I'm just gonna, we can roll with this.
Well, and it's just like the whole Wandavision thing. She was okay with what was going on at first,
the Hex.
Until she started seeing the effects it was having on the citizens of Westview. It started bothering her.
But
at the end.
Yeah, no, she apologizes. That's the point.
Yeah.
Like that's what I'm saying when they say they absolve her of it. She
Right.
got an opportunity to acknowledge the wrong that she had done, and
Yeah. She didn't go full on evil.
Willingly doing.
Yeah, she didn't go full on evil and just like, okay, I'm just gonna keep my family.
Right.
Anyways, both of us could go on about this for hours.
I mean, we are talking about the entirety of the series. It's
Right.
okay that this one goes long.
Right. Well, we
still got one
lightly
more
touched
thing.
the beginning, but we mainly focused on the end.
No, but we got one more thing though. One more thing before we sign off.
Okay.
We gotta talk about the kids.
What about them? Her getting to say their goodbyes and all that,
Well, not just
and then
that.
they're gonna be coming back.
The kids are coming back.
Yeah, they're
We
gonna.
heard the kids' voices.
We heard the kids' voices. I did mention that earlier, and I think if they are brought back, I mean, obviously it'll be in Multiverse of Madness. If not, they'll reappear down the road, and they'll help with the formation of the Young Avengers.
Right.
So that's clearly what's going on.
Right, and the thing that's really important about it is that WandaVision does confirm that they aren't, like Vision, entirely constructs of Wanda.
Right. So somehow she actually
Found two souls.
Right. And a lot of times when that happens with Wanda, it usually has a connection to Mephisto.
Yes. That's probably where everyone's thinking the true entry point for Mephisto and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is going to be centered around the kids.
Right. Is them two her asking for his help to go get her kids.
And that, of course, definitively because one, it was the true end scene.
Right.
And it's the strongest lead-in you could possibly have to the next narrative through line.
Right.
For Wanda. So I just wanted to, make sure that we touched on that before we pet sign.
No, you're absolutely right, and I think that Doctor Strange would agree to helping her based on the fact of the book that she has, the Darkhold.
Yeah,
he probably wants that back.
Probably needs it back.
Yeah. He probably won't use it though. I don't think.
No, the seal it. It's the Book of the Damned. It's
I know.
like
That's what I'm saying.
Necronomicon,
I know.
Throw that
People,
thing in a ditch.
yeah. Which it's so perfect that that's going to be involved, and they have Sam Raimi, obviously, for the second movie. If you think about it, Evil Dead. I mean, come on. That's like the perfect director for this now.
Yep.
I mean, you're clearly gonna get his OG main guy that's in all of his movies. You're gonna get Bruce Campbell somehow in that movie. That's gonna be beautiful.
One cameo.
Yeah, he's in all of his Spider-Man movies, so it's gonna be good. I'm excited. I know Dane's excited. He's a Raimi fan, and I believe you're a Strange fan too.
I am more of a Strange fan than I am a Raimi fan, but because Strange is definitely my favorite character,
right,
over like Peter Parker, for instance.
No, I just meant because of Raimi and all of his other works that he's done.
Yeah, no, I've totally been a fan of the man.
Yeah, so definitely can't wait for Wanda's next outing with Doctor Strange. Can't wait to see Doctor Strange before his own movie and Spider-Man. I'm super excited with seeing what all that's going to be about. It's a shame I didn't get the teases I was hoping to get, but hey, we still got a great show. I think it proved that Disney Plus using that as a vehicle for more content for like a Marvel shows and different things like that, it works, I mean, there might be some people that might be upset because now they got to watch the shows and watch the movies. But, I mean, I'm sure they'll make it to where people can understand watching the movies without watching the shows, but they'll be missing out.
They're on service,
Yeah.
so it's not that big of an ask. You're
Yeah.
already paying for the service. You can.
Well, for most
turn
people
on-
are. Yeah, most people are.
I'm saying. You can turn on the movies again if you need to refresh yourself.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I don't think that Disney's overstepping any bounds here. I do think that they made the smart decision, which is, in my opinion, what you should always do is that if you're going to sequel something, especially something as freaking large as Phase 3 of the MCU, you gotta change the genre you're working with.
Yep.
And this is a perfect example of it.
They definitely mixed things up and made it where people wanted to be engaged again. So we're excited. We can't wait to see what Marvel does next. I'm more excited towards the more magic and cosmic level stuff, and they proved that they can handle that stuff well. Anyways, as I always say, thank you for letting us get to the root of our geek culture with you.